everybody. Hope you guys are having a good day. Might be a little bit of a loud one. It's kind of a windy day. We're next to a busy road in an elementary school. But if you've ever seen the HBO series Band of Brothers, episode 3 is entitled Carentan, and that is where we are today. Really stoked to be here today. If you've ever seen that episode, you'll remember the scene where Dick Winters and Easy Company, this takes place on June the 12th, 1944. Easy Company belonging to the 506th Parachute Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division. They were attacking Carentan, this town from the south. So they were coming up this road this way when a German machine gun in that second story began to open up on them on this road. So the men leading the company went down wounded or killed, while the rest of the company sheltered in these depressions in the road. There's a sidewalk here now, but there's a good example of that on the other side. So in these little side road depressions, the rest of the men of Easy Company were hiding or taking shelter from the German machine gun fire that was coming from that cafe right there. And you'll remember Dick Winters, the commander of Easy Company, is becoming frustrated that his men will not move. They're being pinned down here and they need to take out that cafe. So what he does is he gets up, there's bullets ricocheting off this road right here, and ignoring all dangers, takes off his helmet, is smacking his men on the back, he's kicking them, he's smacking them, cursing at them, trying to get them to get up and move down that way. And which they finally do so. And it takes, I think, a bazooka blast in the front of that cafe. They blew a large hole in it. I think there was a handful of Germans, maybe 3 or 4, and they're finally able to capture that cafe and move down into the south end of Carentan and begin to assault the rest of the town. So yeah, like I said, it's a busy road nowadays, but this was one of the main roads going into the center of Carentan. And Carentan was a very, very important strategic objective for the Allied armies during the Battle of Normandy. Taking this road would link up the beachheads of Utah and Omaha Beach. So the job of taking Carentan was given to the 101st Airborne Division. And the assault that took place beginning here on June the 12th was successful, and they were able to get into the center of town and clear the town of Germans. All right, just a quick thing I wanted to point out while we're here. After the successful assault by the 101st Airborne that concluded on June the 12th, that captured this town of Carentan, the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment that included Easy Company of Band of Brothers fame used these two connected buildings right here as their aid station. So the men that were wounded during the assault on Carentan itself were brought back here and treated in these two buildings. And it does feature pretty prominently in that, I think, episode 3, Band of Brothers, where Private Albert Bly had his case of cerebral blindness, and of course Dick Winters was wounded here with a ricochet bullet, I believe, to the foot as well. So he was taken care of in one of these buildings as well. So yeah, very cool place. All right, so we are here at Dead Man's Corner. During the lead up to the assault on Carentan by the paratroopers of the 101st Airborne, this road junction right here was incredibly vital to get tanks, men, and equipment down into Carentan. This building behind me served as a German HQ and an aid station. As the story goes, an M3 Stuart light tank was coming down the intersection from this direction and apparently was hit in the turret by a German rocket coming from this house. The tank was immobilized and the commander was killed. Eventually that house was seized by paratroopers, but the tank and the commander who was killed in the tank remained in front of the house for a number of days. And the commander itself, he was hanging, his lifeless body was hanging out of the turret of the tank for a number of days. And so they used the destroyed tank and the dead guy in the tank as a landmark. And the paratroopers at first referring to it as the tank with the dead guy hanging out of it, but eventually it got shortened to Dead Man's Corner. So they used the term Dead Man's Corner as a way to tell troops, oh, you'll come down this section of road and you'll see the dead man in the tank, known as Dead Man's Corner, and that's what it's called today. Okay, so we just came up from that way, the village of Saint-Côme-du-Mont and Dead Man's Corner. That was the important intersection way that the 502nd was using to get down this way towards the village of Carentan. This is known as Purple Heart Lane. Now, if you look next to me, this field, the Germans, prior to the assault made by the paratroopers, they flooded the dikes used for the farm's water supply and completely flooded this area to make it completely impassable for any soldiers trying to make their way to Carentan. It's made it a very marshy, swampy mess. So any soldier that wanted, or any soldier, tank or equipment or anything that wanted to get down to Carentan had to use this road. So the Germans were able to concentrate heavy fire from Carentan, which is in that direction, onto this road. And that's why this is known as Purple Heart Lane, for the extensive casualties that the 502nd Paratrooper Regiment suffered on their way to Carentan. So I'm sitting right now next to the Douve River. What's above me right now is part of the causeway known as Purple Heart Lane. Purple Heart Lane consisted of 4 bridges that needed to be crossed by the American paratroopers as they made their way down that way towards Carentan. This is actually the second of the 4 bridges that made up the causeway. And this bridge was actually heavily damaged by the retreating Germans as they were making their way back down towards Carentan to slow down the American advance. The engineers that were assigned to help repair this bridge were having a very, very hard time doing so because of heavy German fire coming from that direction, Carentan itself. And so the commander of the 3rd Battalion, 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division, which was the spearheading battalion of the attack down this causeway to get to Carentan, he finally said, enough is enough. We cannot wait for the engineers to repair this bridge. So on June the 10th, the paratroopers constructed their own makeshift bridge pretty much at this spot where I'm sitting, and were able to move one by one across this river and move down that way closer and closer to Carentan. And that was on June the 10th. They weren't able to get close enough to Carentan until the 11th, and the Germans did not withdraw until June the 12th. And so it took a few days of hard fighting down this causeway to get close enough to Carentan to launch a real assault. All that time, the 506th Easy Company of Band of Brothers fame, among them, was down that way towards the southwest of the town, making their way up to the center using the road junctions. And so yeah, this is bridge number 2 on the Douve on Purple Heart Lane. All right, so we're back at another Band of Brothers location. Behind me here, you might recognize it from episode 2, Day of Days. This is Breakcourt Manor. Richard Winters, the commander of Easy Company, after landing in the early morning hours of D-Day, was able to collect 12 of his men. As we all know, all the paratroopers in both the 82nd Airborne and the 101st Airborne were widely scattered around this area, all along the Côte d'Armor Peninsula. So he was able to grab 12 of his men, and there was a German artillery battery of 105mm guns on the far side of this field. And with those 12 men, with an awesome display of leadership, they were able to eliminate those guns, killing or capturing 50 Germans. And this is now a place of legend for the 101st Airborne, and really just for the American military in general. And it's a really fitting place for what is here next to me. This is the Easy Company Memorial, and this shows the names of all the men of Easy Company that died during Operation Overlord. As you can see, the vast majority of those men died on D-Day itself. Very cool to be here today.
Let's go! Let's go! Follow me!
Okay, this is the Richard Winters Monument. This is pretty cool. I'm very moved right now. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Band of Brothers. If you haven't seen that series, I highly recommend you do so. If you've seen it, then you know who Richard Winters is. He is the commander of Easy Company. This is his likeness. What an incredible monument. He was one of the many men under junior leadership positions on D-Day that led the way under fire, and he did quite a remarkable job. As we mentioned before at Breakcourt Manor, his steady leadership was able to accomplish incredible things that day. But something that's interesting is that he was very reluctant for this monument to be made in the first place. because he understood that he was not the only leader on D-Day. There were many, many, many men under junior leadership positions that did incredible things that day. So what he wanted to emphasize was all leadership on D-Day. And so what we have here is a great quote by Richard Winters that says, "Wars do not make great men, but they do bring out the greatness of good men." Dedicated to all those who led the way on D-Day. If we look here, we got our plaque dedicated specifically to Richard Winters, 1918 to 2011. This was dedicated on D-Day 2012, just about a year after he died. Very cool. May we never forget their leadership under fire. Again, emphasizing all junior leadership on D-Day. Of course, we got the big 06-06-44 to represent D-Day. And on the very back here, which is my favorite part of the monument, is in big bold letters, leadership. It takes good leaders to get shit done. All right, we are here at Utah Beach. Apologies in advance for the wind. It'll probably be a little noisy. This is one of the two American invasion beaches on D-Day, the other of course being Omaha, which is in that direction. This was assaulted by the 4th Infantry Division, as well as small elements of the 90th Infantry Division on D-Day, June 6, 1944. I do have a personal connection to this beach. On June the 10th, 4 days after D-Day, my great-great-uncle Alphonse Pony landed here with the 9th Infantry Division, 39th Regiment C Company, and then continued to move on into the Contretemps Peninsula. This was probably the most successful landing that was made on D-Day. The Americans that landed here only suffered about 200 casualties. The original plan was to land about 1,800 meters down that way. But because of rough seas and some mines that were in the channel, they ended up coming down this way. Another notable person that landed on this beach on that morning is Teddy Roosevelt Jr., the son of the famous president, Teddy Roosevelt. He was the assistant general of the 4th Infantry Division and requested to be sent in with the first wave to help the men. As he said, someone needed to make those tough decisions. And through some bickering and arguments, he was finally allowed to do it. And when he landed here, they realized that they were in the wrong spot. And when his men asked him, "General, what are we gonna do?" he made the famous quote and said, "We'll start the war from right here." And that's what he did. He personally scaled these sand bluffs right here and reconnoitered the land beyond and found safe passage for his men in the 4th Infantry to get off this beach and move inland. So he definitely deserved that Medal of Honor, but he unfortunately died of a heart attack some days later here in Normandy and is buried in the American Cemetery at Omaha Beach. Yeah, a very beautiful beach, and I'm very excited to be here today. So like I said, the assault here on Utah Beach was probably the most successful landing on D-Day. There's a number of reasons for that. I mentioned earlier that the 4th Infantry planned on landing about 1,800 meters in that direction. Actually, up in that direction, you have WN8, WN7, I believe. So, and it's much stronger German defenses up there. They would have been having some trouble dealing with those if they landed in that direction. Here is WN5. It's a much weaker German defense, and so they didn't necessarily come in under as heavy a fire as other soldiers on other beaches did. Another reason why the Germans were not as prepared to defend this beach when the 4th Infantry landed is because of those all-important airborne assaults that were taking place behind German lines miles that way by the 82nd Airborne and the 101st Airborne. It was because of them and taking out gun batteries, messing up communications, capturing stuff like bridges and small towns to not allow Germans to move their troops correctly, that allowed the 4th Infantry and those small elements of the 90th Infantry to land on this beach almost unopposed. They did suffer about 200 casualties in trying to clear these defenses of the few Germans that were here, but like I said, it was incredibly successful and they were able to move in rapidly. Right, this is pretty cool. This is a replica of a Higgins boat. Gives you a nice little perspective of what it would have been like to run down the ramp onto an invasion beach. This is what it looks like from the outside. You all recognize this if you've seen Saving Private Ryan or anything related to the D-Day invasion. A majority of the troops coming in came in on these. but these did serve in every theater in the war. The Pacific, North Africa, the Mediterranean. And then over here is a monument to Andrew Jackson Higgins, the man that designed these. Pretty cool. Alright, this is pretty sweet. I'm assuming that most people, when they come here to Utah Beach, don't know what this is. It kind of looks like a little outhouse or something. Check it out, it's got a date. So we got the 30th of October, 1942. I'm assuming that's when this was built. But this is an air raid shelter, so it can fit maybe 2 people. And you run in here when you see planes coming overhead. Got some little vision slits. Yeah, you would come in here and hide out if bombs were dropping in your area. It's not very big, but definitely a good idea. So right next to this little air raid shelter, you got this gnarly looking M4A1 Easy 8 variant of a Sherman Tank. This was the upgraded version that was given the high velocity 76mm gun. But there's a problem, it shouldn't be here. The Easy 8 variant of the Sherman Tank was not introduced until December 44, long after the Normandy invasion. Didn't see action until the Battle of the Bulge. So if they were trying to be accurate, they would have just put a normal Sherman with the short-barreled 75mm gun on it. But it's pretty cool, so I'm not going to complain. This is the monument to the 4th Infantry Division here at Utah Beach. Okay, real quick, I wanted to make a video about this. This is a German bunker that is just off of Utah Beach. If you look right here, these windows, or windows, quote unquote, were drawn there by the Germans themselves in an attempt to fool Allied reconnaissance into thinking that this was a house and not a bunker. It's pretty cool though, because it says right here, in this bunker, captured from the enemy on June 6th, NOIC of the U.S. Navy established its communications center from the 8th of June to the 31st of October, 1944. This group of 41 men played a great part in the success of landing 836,000 men, 220,000 vehicles, and 725,000 tons of equipment. Very, very cool. And if you walk over this way, so you can get a good look at that right now, and then there's a picture right here from D-Day. I don't know who they were trying to fool with drawing those windows on, but I'm sure they caught on pretty quickly.